On a dust-choked evening in a forgotten saloon, the healing girl freezes as the scarred mountain man beneath her hands whispers, "Touch it again, slowly." The townspeople see her as nothing, a shadow who tends their aches while they ignore her existence, destined to fade into the background of other people's stories until her usefulness expires. But this drifter is different. He pays triple her rate, asks about her knowledge instead of dismissing it, and speaks to her like she matters. What she doesn't know is that he's running from a corrupt network that's been hunting him across 3 territories, and his growing attachment to her has put them both in the crosshairs of the most dangerous men in the West. Will she trust a stranger whose secrets could either liberate her from invisibility or destroy the only life she's ever known? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The Silver Dollar Saloon reeked of whiskey and broken dreams. Lila Mae Turner climbed the narrow stairs to her room, carrying a basin of hot water and clean rags. Her calloused hands had seen 22 years of hard living, but they moved with the precision of someone who understood healing. Sheriff Clayton Brooks blocked her path at the top of the stairs. His badge caught the lamplight as he stepped closer. Too close. "Evening, Lila Mae. Been thinking about our conversation." She kept her eyes down. "I got work to do, Sheriff." "That's what I'm talking about. Seems like you could expand your services. For the right compensation." The words hung in the air, like smoke. Lila Mae shifted the basin to create distance between them. "I'm a healer. Nothing more." Brooks chuckled. "Everything's negotiable in Red Creek. Think about it." He brushed past her, his shoulder knocking her against the wall. Water sloshed over the basin's edge. Inside her small room, Lila Mae set down the basin and steadied her breathing. The wooden floor creaked under loose boards where she hid her savings. $17.32. Every penny earned through backaches, bullet wounds, and knife cuts. Every coin a step closer to opening a real medical practice somewhere people might see her as more than saloon property. The door opened without a knock. A mountain of a man ducked through the frame. His shoulders filled the doorway, and old scars crisscrossed his arms like a road map of violence. But his eyes held something she rarely saw in this place: respect. "You the healer?" His voice carried the weight of exhaustion. "Depends what needs healing." He peeled off his shirt, revealing a fresh wound across his shoulder blade. The cut was clean but deep. Professional work. "Knife fight?" Lila Mae gestured to the bed. "Something like that." He lay face down while she examined the wound. Her fingers traced the injury's edges, feeling for damaged muscle beneath. When she touched a particular scar near his spine, he went rigid. "Touch it again, slowly." The words came out quiet, almost broken. Lila Mae had heard men make similar requests, but this felt different, desperate, like someone starved for gentle contact. She pressed her palm against the old wound. "This one's years old. Army surgeon's work." "How can you tell?" "My grandmother taught me to read scars like stories. This one says you took a bullet for someone else." His breathing changed. "She sounds like a wise woman." "Wisest person I ever knew. Patched up soldiers during the war, both sides. Said pain doesn't pick favorites." Lila Mae cleaned his fresh wound with practiced efficiency. Her grandmother's lessons echoed in her movements. Always clean from center outward. Always check for foreign objects. Always treat the whole person, not just the injury. "You learned well," the stranger said. "Had good reason to learn. Doctors don't come running for people like me." She stitched the cut with thread she'd boiled earlier. 15 neat sutures that would heal without much scarring if he kept them clean. "People like you?" "People the town pretends don't exist unless they need something fixed." The stranger was quiet while she worked. When she finished, he sat up slowly and pulled a leather pouch from his belt. He counted out coins worth 3 times her usual rate. "That's too much. Payment matches the service." He stood and pulled on his shirt. "What's your name?" "Lila Mae Turner." "Jackson Kane." He paused at the door. "If you could go anywhere, start fresh where nobody knew your past, would you?" The question caught her off guard. "Why?" "Just curious what someone with your skills might choose." After he left, Lila Mae sat on her bed counting the extra coins. Jackson Kane's question rolled around in her mind like dice in a cup. Where would she go? California, maybe. Or one of the northern territories where they said a person's worth mattered more than their skin color. Downstairs, voices carried through the floorboards. Sheriff Brooks was talking to someone about strangers asking too many questions, about people who needed to remember their place. Lila Mae pressed her ear to the floor. Brooks mentioned watching the upstairs rooms more carefully, making sure certain girls weren't getting ideas above their station. She moved the loose floorboard and counted her savings again. $17.32 wasn't enough for California. Wasn't enough for anywhere that mattered. 3 days later, Jackson returned. Same time, same quiet knock. This time, he brought something else. Questions. Ever work with gunshot wounds? More than I care to remember. What about arrow wounds, snake bites, things that might happen on a long trail? Lila Mae studied his face. You planning a trip, Mr. Kane? Maybe. Would depend on finding the right people. People with useful skills. Skills like mine? Exactly like yours. She cleaned a cut on his knuckles while he talked. He spoke differently than most men who climbed those stairs. Used words that suggested education. Asked about her knowledge instead of dismissing it. There's opportunity coming, Jackson said, for people brave enough to take it. What kind of opportunity? The kind that changes everything. Outside, Sheriff Brooks's boots echoed on the wooden sidewalk. Getting closer, Jackson heard it too. Think about what I said, Miss Turner. Sometimes the biggest risk is staying where you are. He left through the window instead of the door. Lila Mae watched him drop to the alley below and disappear into the shadows. Her hands still tingled where they'd touched his scars. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to her like she mattered. Like her skills were worth something more than pocket change. The question was whether she was brave enough to believe him. Jackson returned on the 5th night carrying a leather satchel. He set it on the small table beside Lila Mae's wash basin and opened it carefully. Inside lay surgical instruments she'd only seen in medical books. Real scalpels, bone saws, suture needles crafted by skilled hands. Where did you get these? From a doctor who won't be needing them anymore. Jackson's voice carried no threat, only sadness. Natural causes, old age. He wanted his tools to go to someone who'd use them properly. Lila Mae lifted a scalpel with reverence. The balance was perfect, the edge sharp enough to split silk. These are worth more than most people make in a year. They're yours if you want them. What's the catch? Jackson sat heavily on the room's single chair. I need a medic. Real one. Someone who can handle whatever comes up on a long journey. What kind of journey? Cattle drive. California bound. But not just any cattle drive. He leaned forward. I'm putting together a group. People with skills. People looking for fresh starts. Lila Mae set down the scalpel. Why me? Because you're the best healer I've ever seen. Because you're wasted in this place. Because you deserve better. No one had ever told her she deserved better. The words hit harder than any medicine she'd ever swallowed. I've seen your work, Jackson continued. The way you read injuries. How you know exactly what each wound needs. That's not luck. That's training. My grandmother taught me during the war. She was a slave on a plantation outside Atlanta. The master's wife was sickly, so they let my grandmother tend to her. When the fighting started, wounded soldiers from both armies found their way to our door. Lila Mae moved to the window, looking down at Red Creek's empty street. Grandmother said healing was about seeing what others missed. A fever that meant infection. A limp that meant broken bone. A cry that meant internal bleeding. She taught you well. She taught me everything. How to set bones by feel. How to identify poison by smell. How to stop bleeding when there's nothing but rags and prayer. Lila. May's voice grew stronger. She could take a man apart and put him back together with nothing but kitchen knives and sewing thread. Jackson stood. That's exactly what I need. For a cattle drive? For what comes after? His eyes grew serious. California's got opportunities for people willing to work. Medical practices that need skilled hands. Towns that judge ability over appearance. Lila May picked up the scalpel again. What aren't you telling me? There might be complications on the trail. People who don't want us to reach California. What kind of people? The kind that settle disputes with bullets instead of words. Through the window, Sheriff Brooks appeared on the street below. He stopped outside the saloon and looked up toward her room. Even from this distance, his intention was clear. He's getting bolder, Lila May said. Has he hurt you? Not yet, but his patience is wearing thin. She moved away from the window. How long until this cattle drive? 2 weeks. Maybe less if we can gather supplies faster. Footsteps echoed on the stairs outside. Heavy boots. Deliberate pace. Brooks was coming up. Jackson moved toward the window. Think about my offer, Miss Turner. This might be your only chance. The footsteps stopped outside the door. A fist pounded against the wood. Open up, Lila May. Time for that conversation. Jackson was already halfway out the window. 2 weeks, he whispered. The door rattled under Brooks's fist. Don't make me break this down. Lila May hid the medical instruments under her mattress and opened the door. Brooks pushed past her into the room, looking around like a hunting dog following a scent. Thought I heard voices. Just me, Sheriff. He checked the window, then the closet. Funny. Could have sworn I saw someone climb down into the alley. Maybe it was a cat. Brooks grabbed her wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, but firm enough to make his point. I don't like liars, Lila May. And I especially don't like when my property entertains strangers without permission. I'm not your property. His grip tightened. Everything in this town belongs to me. The saloon, the rooms, the girls who work in them. He leaned closer. Especially the girls. Lila May forced herself to meet his eyes. What do you want, Sheriff? Cooperation. The kind that makes both our lives easier. He released her wrist. I'll be back tomorrow night. We'll discuss terms then. After he left, Lila May pulled the instruments from under her mattress. She ran her fingers over each tool, feeling their potential. In skilled hands, they could save lives. In the wrong hands, they were just expensive metal. She thought about her grandmother's words from years before. Sometimes the biggest risk isn't taking a chance. Sometimes it's letting fear keep you in the same place while opportunities pass by. Outside, Red Creek slept under a blanket of stars. Somewhere beyond those stars lay California, cities where a skilled healer might build a practice, places where respect was earned through ability instead of inherited through skin color. Lila May counted her savings one more time. $17.32. Not enough for a train ticket, barely enough for supplies, but maybe enough for hope. She wrapped the medical instruments in clean cloth and hid them in a new spot. Tomorrow she would give Jackson Kane her answer. Tonight she would dream about touching lives instead of just healing wounds. Jackson arrived before dawn, carrying coffee and hard biscuits. He set the meal on Lila May's table like an offering. Steam rose from the tin cup in the cool morning air. Made my decision, she said without preamble. And? I'll go, but I want the whole truth first. Jackson sat across from her. The morning light revealed details she'd missed before. Calloused hands that had held more than just reins. Eyes that had seen violence up close. Scars that told stories of official business gone wrong. My name is Jackson Kane. That part's true. He sipped his coffee. But I'm not just a drifter looking for work. What are you? Former United States Marshal. Served for 8 years until I made the wrong people angry. Lila May's hands stilled on her cup. What kind of wrong people? The kind that steal land from families who can't fight back. The kind that use badges and papers to make theft look legal. Jackson's voice hardened. I uncovered a network operating across 3 territories. Officials taking deeds from farmers who couldn't read the contracts they signed. You tried to stop them. I tried to do my job, gather evidence, build cases, follow the law. He set down his cup. They tried to kill me instead. The pieces fell into place in Lila May's mind. The professional scars. The way he moved like someone always watching for threats. The educated speech that slipped through his careful grammar. So you ran. I disappeared. Let them think they'd won while I figured out how to fight back. And now? Now I'm putting together something they can't ignore. People they've wronged. Evidence they thought was buried. Jackson leaned forward. The cattle drive is real, but it's also cover for getting witnesses to federal authorities in California. Lila May stood and moved to the window. Red Creek looked different in morning light. Smaller, more fragile, like something that could be swept away by determined winds. Why tell me this? Because you're not just coming as a medic. You're coming as someone who matters, someone whose testimony could help put these people in federal prison. My testimony? About Sheriff Brooks, about how he runs this town, about the things you've seen and heard while people pretended you were invisible. The weight of it settled on her shoulders. Not just escape. Justice. The chance to make the people who'd dismissed her entire life face consequences for their actions. There's more, Jackson said. Brooks isn't just corrupt. He's part of the same network I've been chasing. The land scheme extends through Arizona territory. Families losing their farms to fraudulent contracts. Lila May turned from the window. How do you know this? Because I've been watching him, listening, following the money. Jackson's expression grew grim. And because 3 bounty hunters rode into town yesterday asking questions about me. The coffee turned cold in Lila May's hands. They found you. They found where I've been. Doesn't mean they know where I'm going. He stood. But it means we're out of time. The cattle drive leaves in 3 days instead of 2 weeks. 3 days? Pack light. Bring only what matters most. Lila May looked around her small room. Everything she owned fit in 2 crates. Clothes worn thin from washing. Books traded for medical supplies. The hidden medical instruments that represented more wealth than she'd ever touched. What about the other people? The witnesses you mentioned? Already moving. Farmers whose land was stolen. Shopkeepers who were forced out of business. People who've been waiting years for someone to listen to their stories. A knock at the door interrupted them. Not the heavy fist of Sheriff Brooks. Something lighter. More hesitant. Lila May opened it to find Mary Chen, the Chinese woman who ran the town's laundry. Mary's face was pale with fear. Men came to my shop this morning. Strangers. They asked about the big man who's been visiting you. Jackson stepped forward. What did you tell them? Nothing. But they weren't asking politely. Mary's voice shook. They said they'd be back tonight with different questions. After Mary left, the room felt smaller. The walls seemed to press inward like a trap closing. They'll come for me first, Jackson said. Try to take me alive for questioning. What about after they get their answers? They'll clean up loose ends, anyone who might have seen or heard something useful. Lila May understood. She was a loose end now, someone who knew too much to leave behind. So we leave today. We leave in 2 hours. There's a supply wagon heading west. Driver owes me a favor. Lila May began packing her few possessions. Each item went into a canvas bag Jackson had brought. Medical supplies, clean clothes, her grandmother's Bible with pressed flowers between the pages. What about your savings? She retrieved the tin from under the floorboards. $17.32 looked pitiful in the morning light. It's enough, Jackson said. For what? For a new start. The rest we'll earn along the way. Footsteps echoed from the street below. Multiple sets, moving with purpose. Jackson checked the window. 3 men, armed, heading for the saloon. Lila May grabbed her bag. Back way out? Through the kitchen. There's an alley that connects to the stable. They moved quietly down the back stairs. The saloon's kitchen was empty, but voices carried from the front room. Men asking questions about room assignments and regular customers. At the kitchen door, Jackson paused. Once we step outside, there's no coming back. Good, Lila May said. She thought about Sheriff Brooks, about the townspeople who looked through her like glass, about the dreams she'd buried under layers of survival and fear. Then she followed Jackson Kane into the morning sun and toward whatever came next. Behind them, heavy boots climbed the stairs to her empty room. The supply wagon rolled through desert scrub under a punishing sun. Lila May sat beside Jackson on the driver's bench, her medical bag secured between her feet. Behind them, canvas-covered supplies bound for mining camps in the Western Territories. "How far to the rendezvous point?" she asked. "Sunset Ridge. 2 days if we push hard." Jackson's eyes constantly scanned the horizon. "The others are meeting us there." "What others?" "People like us. People with reasons to testify." The wagon hit a rut, jarring Lila May against Jackson's shoulder. She pulled away quickly, but not before noticing how solid he felt. How safe. "Tell me about them." "Thomas Brennan, Irish farmer, lost 300 acres to fraudulent contracts." Jackson guided the horses around a fallen log. "Elena Vasquez. Her family's ranch was seized for unpaid taxes they'd already paid twice." "And they'll trust me?" "They'll trust your skills. Elena's husband took a bullet in the shoulder when they tried to resist the seizure. Infection's setting in." Lila May's hands moved instinctively to her medical bag. "How long ago?" 4 days. Maybe 5. Then we might already be too late." They traveled in silence through the afternoon heat. Dust devils danced across the landscape like ghost dancers. In the distance, red rock formations jutted from the earth like ancient monuments. As evening approached, Jackson pointed to a cluster of buildings ahead. "Way station. We'll water the horses and check for messages." The way station consisted of a trading post, stable, and small inn. A few travelers sat on the porch, nursing drinks and watching the sunset paint the sky purple and gold. Jackson helped Lila May down from the wagon. Her legs were stiff from the long ride, but she forced herself to walk normally. Showing weakness in a place like this could invite unwanted attention. Inside the trading post, the proprietor looked up from his ledger. "Help you folks?" "Water for the horses. Supplies if you have them." Jackson set coins on the counter. "Any messages for Kane?" The man reached under the counter and pulled out a folded paper. Jackson read it quickly, his expression darkening. "Problem?" Lila May asked when they were outside. "Change of plans. Brennan and his family were arrested yesterday, charged with stealing their own livestock." "What about Elena?" "Still free, but barely." Jackson untied the horses from the water trough. "We need to reach Sunset Ridge tonight instead of tomorrow." They pushed through gathering darkness, following a trail that seemed more suggestion than actual road. Stars emerged overhead like scattered diamonds. The desert air grew cold without the sun's heat. "Jackson," Lila May said after an hour of silence, "when you were a marshal, did you ever doubt you were doing the right thing?" "Every day. But doubting and stopping are different things." "What kept you going?" "Seeing what happened when good people did nothing." He adjusted his grip on the reins. "Watching families lose everything because someone with power decided they didn't matter." Around midnight, they crested a ridge and saw a campfire light below. 3 wagons formed a loose circle around the flames. People moved in the orange glow like shadows given substance. Jackson guided their wagon down the slope. As they approached the camp, a woman stepped into the firelight. She was small but carried herself with fierce dignity. Blood stained her sleeve. "Elena Vasquez," Jackson said quietly. Lila May grabbed her medical bag and jumped down before the wagon stopped moving. Elena's husband lay on blankets near the fire, his face gray with fever. The wound in his shoulder had festered into something ugly and dangerous. How long has he been like this? Lila May knelt beside him and opened her bag. 2 days, maybe longer. Time becomes difficult when someone you love is dying. Lila May examined the wound by firelight. The bullet had gone deep, carrying fabric and dirt. Infection had spread through the surrounding tissue like poison ivy. I need clean water. Lots of it. And something to hold him down. Hold him down? I have to remove infected tissue. He won't enjoy the process. Two men stepped forward to help. Lila May cleaned her instruments in boiling water while Elena heated more over the fire. The camp fell silent except for the crackling flames and distant coyote calls. Lila May began cutting away infected flesh with steady hands. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. Cut deep enough to reach healthy tissue, cut shallow enough to preserve function, always cut with purpose. The man's eyes flew open when she hit healthy nerve endings. He tried to sit up, but the men held him steady. Almost finished, Lila May said. She cleaned the wound cavity with water hot enough to steam, then packed it with clean cloth soaked in carbolic acid. Her stitches were small and precise, designed to drain properly while healing. Will he live? Elena asked. Ask me in 3 days, but the fever should break by morning. Lila May cleaned her instruments while Elena tended to her husband. Around the fire, other families watched with something approaching awe. You saved his life, a young woman said. I gave him a chance. He'll do the rest himself. Jackson appeared at her elbow with coffee and bread. Well done. It's what I do. No, it's who you are. The words hit deeper than medical. Training or family pride. For the first time in her life, someone saw her completely, not as a servant or a tool or a convenience, as herself. Elena's husband's breathing steadied as the night wore on. His fever broke just before dawn, exactly as Lila May had predicted. How did you know? Elena asked. Because infection follows rules. Learn the rules and you can beat it most times. Most times? Nothing in medicine is certain except that people will keep getting hurt. Jackson approached with their bags. Time to move. Federal agents are waiting in Tombstone. Lila May looked back at Elena's husband, now sleeping peacefully. This is why you brought me, not just for the trail, for moments like this. This is why you matter, Jackson said. She understood now. The journey wasn't about escape. It was about proving her worth to herself and the world. And she was just getting started. Tombstone's federal building stood like a monument to justice in the desert. Lila May walked up its stone steps beside Jackson, carrying documents that could topple a corruption network spanning 3 territories. Inside, federal agents waited with questions that would finally give voice to years of silent suffering. Agent Morrison was a thin man with intelligent eyes and calloused hands that suggested he'd worked his way up through honest labor. He spread papers across a heavy oak table while Lila May and Jackson took seats opposite him. Miss Turner, Marshal Kane has told us about your observations in Red Creek. We'd like to hear your account directly. Lila May had rehearsed this moment during the long wagon ride. But sitting in that official room, her words carried weight she'd never imagined possible. Sheriff Brooks controls Red Creek through intimidation and selective law enforcement. He protects certain businesses while driving others out through harassment and false charges. Can you provide specific examples? Mary Chen's laundry was robbed 3 times in 6 months. Brooks claimed he couldn't find the thieves, but the stolen goods appeared in his deputy's store the next week. Agent Morrison made notes while she spoke. His pen scratched across paper like justice being written into existence. What about the land seizures? Families would come to town talking about losing their farms, papers they couldn't read, officials who claimed ownership through legal processes that made no sense. Lila May's voice grew stronger. They'd bring their children to me when those children got hurt during the evictions. Hurt how? Broken bones from being thrown off property. Cuts from barbed wire when they tried to retrieve personal belongings. One little girl had nightmares for months after watching men burn her family's crops. Agent Morrison looked up from his notes. You treated these injuries? I treated everyone who came to me, rich or poor, legal or illegal, according to Brooks. Lila May met his eyes. Pain doesn't respect property. Lines. Jackson spread additional documents on the table. Land deeds, forged signatures, financial records showing money flowing between corrupt officials across territorial boundaries. Miss Turner's testimony corroborates evidence we've gathered from other sources, Morrison said. Sheriff Brooks has been in contact with the same network we've been investigating. What happens now? Lila May asked. Federal marshals are already moving to make arrests. Brooks and his associates will face charges in federal court where local influence can't reach them. Through the building's tall windows, Lila May watched Tombstone's main street bustle with afternoon activity. Merchants hawked goods to miners and ranchers. Children played in dust that would become mud when the rains came. Life continued while justice prepared to reshape the landscape. There's something else, Morrison said. The territorial government is establishing medical positions in underserved areas. People with your skills and experience are exactly what they need. Medical positions? Official appointments, government salary, authority to establish clinics and train assistants. Morrison pulled out another document. Dr. Sarah Palmer in Sacramento specifically requested we ask if you'd consider joining her practice. Lila May's hands trembled as she read the letter. A real doctor wanted her as an equal partner, someone who'd heard about her skills through the network of people she'd helped along the trail. Dr. Palmer treats everyone regardless of their ability to pay, Morrison explained. She needs someone who understands both medicine and the communities that established doctors often ignore. Jackson squeezed her hand under the table. What do you think? I think my grandmother would be proud. 2 weeks later, Lila May stood in the Sacramento clinic that would become her new home. Dr. Palmer was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and eyes that held the same determined kindness Lila May remembered from her grandmother. The position comes with a house, Dr. Palmer said, showing her through rooms filled with modern medical equipment. Small, but private. And there's space in the back for a garden if you're inclined toward growing healing herbs. I've always wanted to try that. Good. This work requires someone who can adapt, learn new techniques, teach others what they need to know. The clinic's waiting area was filled with patients from every background Tombstone had taught Lila May to recognize. Mexican families, Chinese workers, Irish immigrants, former slaves seeking new lives in California's promise of opportunity. They all need care, Dr. Palmer said, and they all deserve respect while receiving it. Jackson appeared in the doorway wearing clothes that marked him as a federal agent rather than a drifter. His badge caught afternoon sunlight streaming through the clinic's windows. How's the new job? Lila May asked. Complicated. Rewarding. Like most things worth doing. He looked around the clinic with obvious pride. How's yours? The same. That evening, they walked through Sacramento's streets as equal citizens of a community that judged ability over appearance. Jackson had accepted a permanent position with the federal marshals, investigating corruption across the Western territories. Lila May would run medical clinics in communities that needed healing most. Strange how things work out, Jackson said. Not strange, inevitable. Lila May stopped beside a fountain in the town square. We chose to act instead of accept. Everything else followed from that choice. Any regrets about leaving Red Creek? Only that we didn't leave sooner. A letter in Lila May's pocket crackled as she moved. It had arrived that morning from a young woman in Arizona Territory who wanted to learn medical arts. Someone who'd heard Lila May's story and decided her own life could be different too. Tomorrow I start teaching classes, Lila May said. Teaching what? Everything my grandmother taught me. Everything I learned on my own. Everything that matters when someone's life depends on your knowledge and skill. Jackson smiled. The world's about to get a lot healthier. Above them, stars emerged in the darkening sky. The same stars that had watched over their desperate flight from Red Creek now witnessed their arrival at something better. Something earned through courage and sustained through mutual respect. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell marked the hour. Time moving forward toward possibilities neither had dared imagine when they first met in a forgotten saloon room. The future stretched ahead like an unmapped territory, waiting to be explored by people brave enough to claim it. 6 months later, the Sacramento Medical Clinic bustled with morning activity. Lila May moved between examination rooms with the confidence of someone who belonged exactly where she stood, Sunlight streamed through windows that overlooked a garden where medicinal herbs grew in neat rows. Touch it again, slowly. The words came from Miguel Santos, a railroad worker whose shoulder had been dislocated in a construction accident. But this time, the request carried no desperation, only trust in her professional expertise. Leela May's fingers probed the joint carefully, feeling for proper alignment. Range of motion is perfect. You can return to full work next week. Gracias, Doctora Turner. The title still made her heart skip, not because she craved recognition, but because it represented something larger than personal achievement. Respect earned through skill and dedication. Dr. Palmer appeared in the doorway, reviewing patient charts. The Territorial Medical Board confirmed your appointment yesterday. You're now officially licensed to practice independently. Independent practice? There's a community near the California-Nevada border, mining town called Silver Falls. They've requested a resident doctor. Dr. Palmer smiled. I recommended you without hesitation. Lila May looked out at her garden, where students tended plants between their lessons. 3 young women had arrived from distant territories, drawn by stories of a place where medical knowledge was shared freely, regardless of the student's background. What about my teaching responsibilities here? They come with you. The territorial government wants to establish medical training programs in underserved areas. Dr. Palmer handed her a thick envelope. This contains your official commission and funding for supplies. That afternoon, Jackson arrived at the clinic, wearing his federal marshal's badge and carrying news from the outside world. His face had lost the haunted expression she remembered from their first meeting. Purpose suited him. How did the trials go? Lila May asked. Sheriff Brooks received 15 years in federal prison. His associates got similar sentences. Jackson sat in the garden while she harvested lavender for evening medicines. The land seizure network is finished. What about the families who lost their farms? Federal court ordered full restitution. Elena Vasquez got her ranch back, plus compensation for lost livestock. Jackson plucked a sprig of mint and inhaled its sharp scent. Thomas Brennan's family received new deeds and enough money to rebuild. Lila May's hands stilled among the herbs. Justice actually worked. This time, because people like you were brave enough to speak truth when it mattered. A letter crackled in Jackson's jacket pocket. He pulled it out and handed it to her. The return address showed Red Creek, Arizona Territory. From Mary Chen, he explained. Lila May opened it carefully. Mary's neat handwriting covered 2 pages, describing changes in the town since Brooks's arrest. A new sheriff who enforced laws fairly. Businesses reopening without fear of harassment. Families returning to rebuild what corruption had destroyed. The letter's final paragraph made Lila May's breath catch. There's a young woman here named Sarah Williams. She's been asking about you. Says she wants to learn healing like you did. I told her your story, and now she's determined to find her own path to medical training. Would you consider taking her as a student? Another student? Jackson asked. A young woman in Red Creek who wants to learn medicine. Lila May folded the letter carefully. Mary says she's determined to follow the path we opened. Will you take her? If she's serious about the work, yes. Lila May stood and brushed soil from her hands. My grandmother always said knowledge grows stronger when it's shared. Jackson pulled another document from his jacket. Speaking of paths, I have something else. The paper was a property deed for land near Silver Falls. 30 acres of fertile valley with water rights and mineral claims already surveyed. What's this? Payment for consulting work with the federal marshals. I thought it might be useful for someone planning to establish a medical practice in a new territory. Lila May studied the deed with wonder. Land of her own. Space to build, not just a clinic, but a training center where knowledge could spread like seeds on fertile ground. You want to be partners in this venture? She asked. If you'll have me. The marshals need someone based in that region anyway. Too much corruption still hiding in remote places. What kind of partnership? Jackson's expression grew serious. The kind built on mutual respect, shared purpose, understanding that we're stronger together than apart. The words carried meaning beyond business arrangements. 6 months of working alongside each other had revealed depths of character that made professional partnership seem like the foundation for something more lasting. "I'd like that," Lila May said. That evening they walked through Sacramento's streets as the sun painted the sky purple and gold. Around them, the city hummed with the energy of people building something new in territory that rewarded effort over inheritance. "Strange to think it all started with a wounded stranger asking for gentle touch," Jackson said. "Not strange, inevitable." Lila May stopped beside the fountain where they'd stood months earlier. Every great change begins with someone willing to reach out when reaching out feels impossible. A young woman approached them hesitantly. She carried a medical bag that had seen better days and wore clothes dusty from long travel. "Excuse me, are you Dr. Turner?" "I am." "My name is Sarah Williams. I traveled here from Red Creek because Mary Chen said you might teach me medicine." The girl's voice shook with nervous determination. "I know I'm not the kind of person who usually becomes a doctor, but I'm willing to work harder than anyone if you'll give me a chance." Lila May saw herself reflected in the young woman's hopeful face. The hunger for knowledge, the determination to prove worth through action, the courage to ask for opportunities others said she didn't deserve. "Can you start tomorrow?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. We leave for Silver Falls next week to establish a new clinic. You'll learn while we build." Sarah's face lit with joy that made the evening brighter. Another life about to change direction. Another person discovering that courage opens doors others insist should remain closed. Above them, stars emerged in the darkening sky. The same stars that had witnessed their escape from Red Creek now watched over the expansion of possibilities they'd fought to create. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new communities that needed healing, new students hungry for knowledge that could transform their lives. But tonight, Lila May Turner stood in a place where her touch mattered, not because she was invisible, but because she was finally, completely seen.